and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting was sent to the Cranberry Press, Trenton Times, and Home News Tribune on January 8, 2014, posted on the bulletin board, posted on the township's website, and sent to those who requested a copy of this notice. Roll call, Mr. Cook is not here yet. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Mulligan?
Here.
Mr. Taylor?
Here.
Mayor Getz? Here. We have 4 members present and 1 absent.
I'm assuming we'll see Dave. Dave is coming.
Yes.
He didn't say he wasn't
I
coming.
said to the tax category.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Just real quick, I thought, since we don't usually get a lot of people in the audience here, but hopefully people are watching this as it's filmed and Tom's filming, I just want to talk just real quick about the budget process for those who don't know how it works. What we do is sometime during the fourth quarter, what Denise does is goes out to all departments and all department heads and asks for their proposed budget for the year. She gets that back, she looks at it, she negotiates with each one, and she understands that increases are probably going to be very difficult, and then presents to us what a proposed budget is. We also then receive revenue projections from our tax assessor. Lets us know what we can expect to receive on taxes, what we can get on grants, and what kind of income we anticipate for the year. Just like in your house, so now you know what you have to spend, and now you know what you're getting in. What we then do today is take a look at that and see, what we can do and what we can't do for the year. Mr. Cook. One thing I do want to point out, because I'm sure people have some idea of this, but the portion of your tax bill that we have is split up between the municipal bill, the county bill, and the school bill. And generally speaking, the county is roughly 20% of your property taxes. The school is roughly 56%, and municipal, this budget that we're working on today makes up about 24% of the tax bill. The school budget is voted on very separately. The township committee has nothing to do with the school budget. It's a very independent process that is put out for a vote. Our issue this year is going to be a tough year. We have continued to have declining revenues. We had hoped that the recession had hit bottom and things were returning. And we do have some projects that are on that have been approved, and we anticipate coming online. But as Glenn pointed out yesterday, there's no shovels in the ground on these projects. And this could be a while before they result in any increased revenue. So we're still dealing with decreasing revenue when we look at this year's budget. I spent some time looking through it, and every department has done an incredible job of trying to live with less. So I think we start there, realizing that they really have tried hard to do this. But at this point now, we have to look at that, decide what level of service we want to continue to provide to Cranberry, and how we're going to pay for it. A combination of taxes, and if we want to dip into our surplus, just like in our homes, we dip into our savings account. We have to make that decision here today too. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with the police budget. As most people know, it's one of the higher components of our budget. So we have police officers here to talk about the operating and capital budget for the police, and that's where we'll start. We'll go through LoSAP, we'll go through the salary pool, we will talk about the capital plan, and then we'll have a discussion about surplus and whether or not we need to increase the tax rate. This all comes the course of today. We're going to try to get, if we can get through this today, we will. Starting now, we have a quick break for lunch, and we'll stay as long as we have to stay if the end is in sight. If we can't finish it today, we'll have a second meeting. So, we'll start with police. Denise?
Actually, can I just make one comment? Because I want to make sure that the residents are aware. Last year, we did not have a tax rate increase, and 4 years before that, we did. And when we did raise taxes, we all said to the residents, if the property taxes stabilize, if the rate will stabilize, we're not going to have a tax increase. We're going to work with the budget. So I'm hoping that the trust that we instilled in the residents at that point in time by not having a tax increase last year, by sitting here saying, you know, the property tax is stabilized, both some goodwill this year with the tough budget season. And I hope people do recognize that we're trying to be as upfront with residents as possible, adhere to promises that we made.
But I think also in addition to that, I think what's been happening over the last number of years too, which involves virtually everyone here at the diocese, is that there's a 5-year sort of a component to this, is that this is a rolling budget. It doesn't happen in 1 year in just a silo or in isolation. It's a process which we have to manage, looking not just at 2014, but going out 15, 16, and 17. We look at the budget, and as the mayor mentioned too, as far as the surplus is concerned, that is a pool that's been getting smaller and smaller for the last 4 to 6 years, really since 2008. So when the mayor mentions it's a struggle, and also Mr. Taylor mentions last year with the no rate increase, these are all pieces to a much bigger picture, which is a tough picture, and the outlook is fairly draconian as far as any sort of additional funds or monies coming in. I know mentioned the development is part of that issue too. There are projects that are in the pipeline, but they're not, as mentioned by the mayor, in the ground. So I want to be clear as well that we don't look at each year in isolation, but it's part of a 3 to 5 year plan.
Now, I'll echo those comments. We've done a real good job of that as a township committee of making sure that we're not making political decisions that are 1 year back in our silo. It's been about the long-term future of this town, and I expect it to continue that way today. I think one of the important things that we need to point out is this governing body has been together for the most part quite a while, and we've made a lot of substantial cuts over the last several years. We're to the point that we literally are to the bone in a lot of areas, and we will start affecting the Cranberry experience if we do need to make deeper cuts, whether it be this year or years in the future. Another point I'd like to make is the tax rate going up is really trying to raise the same revenue that we've been raising for the most part, because property values have been going down. It's not like property values have been going up and we've been raising the rates, so we're raising tremendously more money. If you look at the history of the budgets over the last several years, the core operating budget, the things that we really have control over, have not changed tremendously. The numbers that go up are the things that are out of our control. There's contractual commitments, there's different commitments that are state mandated, there's healthcare costs that have gone up, and every business and government has been facing those costs. So I think it's a key message that we haven't been recklessly spending in any way. We have made cuts. It's about trying to raise the same core revenue, and that's why the rate goes up. And at some point, if property values do come up, which they will, we hope soon, that's when you'll see the stabilization of the tax rate, because then you don't have to keep raising that rate to raise the revenue. The property values will bring the revenue up for you. And at some point in the future, you might actually see a tax cut. That's a long ways off, but based on the data I see, but it is feasible and possible, and people do need to bear with us and work with us through this.
I think it's all this.
You just got investing in that seat.
So we're going to start with the police budget. Ricky and I sat down and we went through the operating budget line by line. We were able to cut from his operating expenses $6,000, over $6,300 we cut from that. He is basically now bare bones in his operating expenses. We've looked at everything, every contract that's within the line items, and we can't really add any more from that expense budget. We also went through and looked at his, obviously, salary and wage budget. Most of that is contractual. We cannot change the base salary, the holiday, the longevity. It's all part of the police contract that does not expire for 2 or 3 more years. But we did take a look at overtime, and Ricky is willing to decrease his overtime down from what he initially proposed, so that we can have another cut of $30,000. So overall, the police have reduced their budget by $36,300. I don't think we can ask more than that from one department. So we've gone through and done that. That's not reflected in the spreadsheets that you have in the front of your room right now. We went over that Thursday and yesterday, and we need those cuts.
Would that put us back to the 2013 budget levels then, or is there any increase in, or flat? so the effect of what we can, I guess, adjust, we've done that, is that
Yes.
around 2013 level, so?
Yes. What was the overtime cut? You talked about it.
$30,000, $30,000.
And how are we getting a $30,000 cut? What's,
Well, what I looked at was, in 2012, we spent 200, I think it was 32,000, you have that?
232.
232,000 in overtime. In 2012, we hired one officer. He came on, I think it was June 1st of 2012. Substantially reduced where the overtime cost could have been for that year. 2013, we hired another officer. Last year, in 2013, I spent 159, I think it was just under 160,000 in overtime. I'm projecting and I'm hoping that I can hold the number of 140. If I don't, we're looking at going probably back up to around 200,000 in overtime, which is probably about the salary that the additional officer is. So I'm trying to work within, that range of where we're hiring, we're putting on in my salary and wages to reduce my overtime. I'm hoping to hold 140. If I can do better, I'll certainly do better. I don't, go out and spend money carelessly, recklessly, or to cover shifts. The overtime strictly to cover shifts.
so what's the officer's salary this year?
The new officer,
Full year?
63,000, about 63,000.
So 63,000 for the officer, and that's including benefits, or?
That's not including pension or health benefits.
So we have pension, health benefits on top of that, but we'll save 32,000. So it's really, okay, gotcha, thank you.
Hoping more.
I'm with
It's
you.
always, I want to hold 140. I'd like to do better than that. I just don't, if I have an issue, if I have an officer out with an illness, an injury, maternity leave, something like that, it could, waiver my, where I stand. But I think at 140, I'm pretty confident I can hold that. And if you look at my operating,
Are you hearing okay?
Okay.
and if you look at my operating, that 6,000 something is about 4% of my operating budget, which I increased. And that came mostly through contracts. We had a contract with Tectron for our radio systems, and they folded, they went under. So we had budgeted in the past money to do a per diem. If there's a problem, if there's an issue with a repeater or backup system, something like that, we could pay. And what I did is I trimmed all that. We looked at over the past 3-4 years how much we spent, and I adjusted that accordingly. So we if I have a catastrophic incident, we might have to look at doing something, but I'm pretty confident. Our systems are good. Our repeater's fairly new. I think we're doing pretty well with our systems, so I think we'll be okay.
Just switching gears slightly, if I'm just reading it correctly, if it's page 3 on the police budget, if I look at actual, cost for 13, that's the $2,133,000 number?
Yeah, that's the actual budget.
Okay, that's everything, but that's what was actually spent?
No, what was actually spent, you can't even look at on here.
Okay.
Because $1,753,000 only took us through November 15th. That's why I printed this out.
Oh, okay, so then if you have the aggregate number from 14 to 2,241, or 2,241?
Well, right, now, so we cut another 36 off of that.
Right, so we're looking then at a 2.210, basically, right?
205.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's how much higher than last year, based on the numbers?
It's high, well, the budget itself is higher, but we also have to remember that we have IT network, Abdul, which is about double what we paid R&D, and that kicked in this year. So we're talking another $11,000 on top of that.
So percentage basis, it's 2%?
He's about even with what he was in 2013. If you take into account, we have the additional $11,000 for IT, and he's cut his budget by 30 cents.
Right, so it's essentially flat then for 13?
Right.
Okay.
And he does
Compared to
have
13.
a new officer for the whole year in there, rather than just 6 months. So he
Okay.
made enough cuts to cover for that.
So for the same, I'm going to be, ridiculously simple, but for the same money that we spent in 13, we have an additional officer, and then overtime's coming down to the number mentioned, around 140, which is where you want to stay. I realize that it may move up and down to some degree, but essentially it's flat for 2000.
Except for our contractual
Yeah.
employees.
Right.
The operating budget is taking blood from the stone at this point. We've been bleeding it for many years. It's, with anything that we're getting to, if we're $32,000 in overtime, but you're spending $60,000 on a salary, and then you're paying for healthcare and benefits, you know, the numbers are swinging in the wrong way at that point, unfortunately. So that's just where we're at with the police. You know, it is what it is. That's where the numbers lie. Essentially, the budget is flat, but those payroll costs are going to go up again next year.
If I may save 30,000 from what I initially put in, you cut that officer, I'm going to be at least at 20,000 in overtime.
Understood.
So that's, you're talking a $60,000 swing.
Right. So right now, we're putting out $60,000 plus in payroll. We're saving $30,000 in
Possibly.
overtime. Okay.
But
So,
when I down one more officer, I could generate more if I have people out. I have a lot of hours to go.
I understand. I'm just looking pure though. You know, when I take $30,000 out of the overtime, I add 60 to the regular time. You know, that there's still a $30,000 expense there. And then if you look factor in healthcare and you factor in benefits, there's another expenditure there, and that expenditure all is going to go up again next year. So I'm just pointing it out. That's just the way I'm looking at the numbers.
One thing I want to mention too is that, like getting ridiculously simple again, realizing 14 and 13, let's say it's basically flat as far as the cost. So looking out into the next year, I know we've talked about this last year too, as far as persons, whether it be retirement or leaving for whatever reason. I mean, part of the building and the way I see it is it's like actuarial assumptions. It's a smoothing process. Now, the expectation is that maybe in 14, and maybe you can comment as a chief, is that is there a thought of someone leaving in 14, which would then, there'd be a savings from a senior cost basis, but then, of course, the need for an additional officer. I know it could be speculation at this point.
It's absolutely a possibility. But what you also have to consider is everybody, you know, is in the mindset, because since 2011, when I had 2 officers retire, we were a 19-man department. We went down to 17. When I reorganized the department, we were a 17-man department. There were a lot of things that were done during that time, and we were at base level. We had 2 retirements in 2011, brought us to 15 officers. Everybody has the mindset that we had an additional officer. I'm still down to the 10% of my department, because we were at 19. And 17 is where I need to run. When I reorganized that department, and the lieutenants and the other officers, the FOP, everybody came together, and, you know, the lieutenants gave back, I think they were working for a 1,456-hour work year. They're now working 2,080 without any compensation. We fixed what was broken, because we saw we were going to be down 2 officers. I sat here, everybody agreed, it's great, let's do it, let's go forward with it. I lived up to my commitment. I think we need to work together. I need to have a 17-man department. I don't, you know, it's very difficult to function when you're down that many officers. The mindset is that you have a section officer. I don't, I'm down over 10%.
Right, no, but I want to be clear too, is that, you know, that want to work with you, of course, and that's part of why I'm trying to get an idea, what's the cost over last year as far as the short term, but then over 14 and into 15, if there's a smoothing process, if in fact there's a thought that there may be a senior officer or officers who may retire, and then the idea of bringing in additional officers, they come in at a lower cost point, but if that is, if there's I know it's speculation again, is that a possibility, and if it is, that's what I will also factor into some of the decision making here, because it may be, just for lack of a better term, it may look expensive here, but if over the duration of 12 to 18 months that it comes in where it would actually, there's a benefit to a transition in personnel, and that's something that's a positive.
And I understand, we'll have to look at dollars and cents, that's what we have to do. We have to be responsible, but you know, up to the point, the committees before you, and some of you were on those committees, agreed that a 19-man department is what we needed. We went down to a 17-man department. We sat here, and all but the mayor was on that committee and agreed, 17-man department is it. Can you function with it? I said, yes, I'll just, you know, do what I can do. We revamped the department and reorganized for a 17-man department, like I said, at great cost. Officers who just stepped up and looked at the bigger picture, trusted me, trusted the town. We're all going to do the right thing. Here we are. We're working very hard. The officers, you know, they work hard for you. They work hard for me.
Right. I'm not saying that we wouldn't fill that slot that would be left vacant, but we're operating how many officers are we operating?
No, I understand what Mr. Mulligan would say. He's looking at, you know, payroll and those things and trying to equate that. But you have to understand that I'm at 17, and that's where a while ago we agreed to be, and it's very difficult to maintain a police department, 24/7 operation, and cover shifts going anywhere below that. And it shows in the overtime. In 2012, when I was below it, and for half the year, I was at the 16-officer department, for half the year, it was $232,000 in overtime. Granted, about $9,000 of it was Superstorm Sandy, but you're still at $220,000 in overtime for a half a year with a 16-officer department.
Yeah, no, I'm not disputing that you've done a Herculean job in that respect. I get what I'm trying to gather at this point, that if you're at 17 now, let's assume there may be one retirement that puts you at 16. We all know that you have to
Right, there will
replace
be
that
right,
officer.
and there will be a savings in salary from a higher officer to a first-year officer.
Right, and so I'm using some of that to factor in on some of what we're doing here in the short term, and respecting what you just described as far as operating on a shoestring. So that's what I want the board to consider at the same time too. Now, I know it's speculation on who may or who may not do that, but if you think there's a significant possibility of that possibly happening, then that factors in as a positive for me as it relates to the fiscal issue.
There is. It's just a matter of timing for an individual.
So I'll just clarify, I agree with the fact that the ideal scenario is you have the, more expensive officers as they retire, you can backfill, but, there's a smoothing out, I agree, because, we want to keep that number about the same. I do come back to the fact that 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, when I joined this committee, when we were staring at the abyss of financial ruin in the town, we did not lay off anybody. And then we had 2 retirements, and we replaced 1. Last year, the way the discussion I remember happening was, we're going to bring on a new officer because we're going to have a retirement, and we want to get them up to speed and get it and ramp them up. And that hasn't happened as quickly, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't keep going with that. But if there's another retirement, we just shouldn't be assuming that we're going to replace that person, because we were down, man. We may need to go back down to those levels, because if you look at the financial state of this town going over the next 3 to 5 years, we're going to be in much deeper situations where you're going to be laying off people because there's not going to be money unless we're going to have astronomical tax increases in this town. So we need to look at every way we can to save money so that we don't get in that situation, because the last thing I want to do is see us have to lay off anybody. And I certainly don't want to hire somebody and then have to lay them off the next year. Those are things that concern me. So, hopefully things work out. Hopefully the economy recovers. It has not to the extent that that's just the financial realities we're dealing with.
Well, I hope we would look other places first before considering diminishing the size of the department in public safety in the town. I would hope that would be one of the last places that this committee would look to turn to cut, such a service.
And Chief, and that's what we're doing. We're starting with you because that is a large piece of our budget. We wanted to get the background and the information here. We're not making any decision at any point in this day. You're not going to walk out of here with a promise or a threat or what we're going to do. We just need to get the facts so that we can put it all together at the end of the day and make a decision on whether or not we have to do an increase or not do an increase, or we have to go into a surplus. I think we have the facts.
Yeah, and Paul, I want to chime in on that too, is that I don't want to be reckless in this either. I think the reality is that you can function in a way that's safe for the town at a certain level, and you've identified that. To go below it is then you start rolling dice. I don't think anyone wants to do that here. But I think at the same time is that part of the consideration that we have this year is that not only looking at the costs of categorically across the board, but we're going to have to raise revenue, and that's going to be, we have to consider a tax increase on that as well. I think, if we want to compare Cranberry against other townships that have been in scenarios where I always mention Lawrenceville each and every year, and I think I've done that since I was running for office, but that was a catastrophe where we lost they had to lose head count, they had an increase that had to go to public referendum to the point where the public said we're not going to increase taxes enough to cover it. But that's the sort of scenario that we don't want to get into. But I think what we have this year, unlike last year, is that we are looking at the need to find as much savings as we can. And I think, as Mr. Mulligan mentioned earlier, there really is nowhere else to go except significant head count. That's where the significant cuts would come from. I'm not lobbying for that, but that part of this is setting the table for what we're going to have to do, which most likely will be some sort of tax increase, but at the same time, make sure that we're not leaving something on the table that may be more efficient, or can run as efficiently with less money.
Yeah, and the last thing I want to do is cut the police rate. That's not what I'm
No,
advocating here, and the reality is we just might get put in a situation as a community. There's a 2% tax cap, and I'm trying trying to do everything I can to avoid that as my one person being in this committee. It's not what I want to see, but just trying to point out there are scenarios that can happen that are not beyond the realms of really happening.
No, and I understand you're looking at the bigger picture, you're looking years ahead. I just want you all to understand that I've worked hard from the day one when I became chief to have to reorganize, to do what I can to work with what I have and what the committee gives me. And I just want to feel that, we're working together on that. Every year I come to you asking, and I told you last year, if I get this officer, you're not going to hear me coming back next year for another officer. And I don't. I keep my word. I will work with what you've given me, and I'll do my best, but I just want you to understand it and hear my voice, that, what my needs are and what my concerns are.
I think it's very important in this town. I think we all value living here because we feel safe. And I think the police department is the reason we feel safe. And I think that helps our property values and makes us a desirable place to live. So we're not trying to do anything that's going to impact your ability to continue to keep the people of Cranberry safe. We just need to look.
And for the record, you do a great job.
Yeah.
I said this last year, you've done a lot more with less, and I appreciate it, I understand, I know you're a resident here, Frank's done a great job, the force does a good job. It's just, it gets uncomfortable because, it's my job to have an uncomfortable conversation here financially. It's just the reality of it, it doesn't mean it's personal or that I don't like the police, because I do, I like the job you guys do. But I'm just trying to have that conversation, get things on the table so we all know what the possibilities and probabilities are, what we're trying to avoid. That's really what it comes down to. I just want to let you know that. Okay.
Yeah, no, I just a few things. First off, I think it's important to highlight the fact that this budget is actually on overtime, almost $100,000 less than what the actual spend on overtime was in 2012. So I don't want that to get lost in the message. The second thing is, I just did a quick calculation, and when I went to pull my calculator, I apologize for the GPS kicking on. But we did payroll on November 15th, and the budget was about 381 less than what was budgeted, the actual. Unless something really came up that I'm not aware of, it should be under to some extent. So I don't know what we budgeted last year. So I think that you should be commended on coming in less than what was appropriated last year. The last thing I would say is that I agree with Mr. Mulligan in the fact that Cranberry is a special community, and we do want to look at all the budgets and make sure that we keep the community the way that it is. To me, the police are a large aspect of that. There's numbers of towns that have beautiful Main Street areas in town, like Victorian houses, but you'd never, ever want to go away and walk around at night. And I'm thinking about you that I've had relatives that have lived in, grandparents and whatnot, and you look at it and say, wow, look at that big mansion, and you go, yeah, there's a reason it's sold for $100,000. So what I'm getting at is, from my view, schools and public safety are the things that we need to maintain in order to maintain our character of the town. And the other stuff is where we have to then look to cut before we go to public safety in the schools.
Any other questions for the chief and officer?
Okay, then I suggest we move on to capital. Police capital.
And this is where our wonderful politicians and trying to come in to undo everything that we're trying to do here in town.
Before we go to the first item, I'd just like everyone to know that the seventh item down, the internal affairs module for our CAD system. Since I have submitted this to Denise, the county has presented an info share module that's specifically designed for conducting internal affairs investigation, and we were invited to join in on this. And if we do, it would be no cost to us at all. However, the meeting that they had proposed was canceled due to the technical difficulties that they were having. However, when the county does come out with this, it would be no cost to us, and so therefore there's a savings with us joining the system. So therefore, I don't see a need to go forward with that.
What system is it? Which one are you talking about?
The seventh item down, the internal affairs for our CAD system.
Okay.
Internal affairs module, $5,000.
Frank, what is CAD and RMS stand for?
CAD is our computer dispatching, and RMS is our record management system. Enforces the presentation of you in Mulligan 7 when you came to our record.
important to know that capital, we have to be very careful with capital as well, although it's not going to affect the tax rate this year. The mayor and I talked about this yesterday. It ultimately does affect the tax rate in the future. It's debt, and we're going to have to fund it eventually. So with that in mind, I asked Ricky and Frank to kind of prioritize what is most important, what is absolutely necessary out of these capital requests, and what can maybe be pushed off or taken out. So when they go through them,
One number, did you put together anything with a summary of our current debt by chance, Russ?
I don't have that with me.
Okay.
I have it upstairs. But our current debt is about 18 million right now.
Thank you.
And that's gone down from where we were just a few years ago.
It's gone down. We did go back up only because we just did the bond sale for $5 million.
So was it 21 million roughly 4 years ago?
Yeah, I think I have to look at the number now. It was down 18 million. It might be back up a little bit now.
We were at like 22,
Yeah.
actually. So, yeah, no, we're down. I was just trying to understand, where we're at, because we're going to look at an overall number at some point today, how much our debt's costing us. So, as we're accumulating debt today, just to try to keep it.
I just finished my annual debt statement, so I don't have upstairs.
Okay, thank you.
Chief or Frank, I just had a question on the loss scan system, because this is something that I understand is a state mandated system that we purchased for $42,000. Does it have to be purchased this year to be compliant?
Well, here's, part of the problem before Frank gets into it is that our old system, they upped my service contract on it this year also, and we're supposed to be compliant. Do you have the year? I think it is 2014.
February, when it came out, February
For the primary.
February 2013, it came out, actually. So
And we
we're
had
fine.
1 year to be compliant?
Yeah, and the problem is my old system, I knew we were gonna have to switch over. I didn't put a service contract on it. They tried to up it by like 30% for the final year because they're saying, the system's old, it's gonna cost more to maintain it. So I rolled the dice and I didn't get the service contract. I don't go to Atlantic City and it's a lot.
I was going to say, we buy an American Express
Well-
card, it's kind of warranted.
Now they won't warranty it.
Now they won't.
It's out of its life expectancy, they won't warranty it any longer.
So what happened was, of course, right towards the end of the year, we had a failure with it. Thankfully, IT Solutions stepped in and took a look at it. It was a fix. They wanted the support system for live scan, and it's the only system you can use. They're a sole provider. They wanted, I think it was $650-some to sit behind a desk and try to fix the problem remotely, which I knew wasn't going to be the problem. It was a hardware problem. And then after that, spending that money for those minimum 2 hours, they would send a tech out and more cost because I didn't have the service contract. So kind of learned my lesson with it. We did now just have a power board failure in the computer, and again, IT Solutions has taken care of that for us, more back up and running. So we do need to be compliant this year, and we do need the system, because I have a system that is starting failures with, and I have no recourse. I really can't, the expenses to fix it are just astronomical.
So this is a big difference
And
between.
just interrupt one second, with this particular system, this computer technically, IP network solutions isn't supposed to touch this computer. This is supposed to be maintained by the state police. However, in this situation, their tech support couldn't even look at it because it wouldn't power up. So I got on the phone with Chris from IP Network Solutions and told him the situation. He diagnosed it. I asked him what could be a problem. He said the power supply. So he asked me if he would look at it if I could bring the computer in. So I did. I drove it down to their office. He had a spare part, it would power up. It wasn't an exact part, so he had to order a new part, and the part was minimum cost. It's $60-some, I think. And of course, an RFP for him because it's not something that's on our network, and he's not technically supposed to even service that computer. However, to bail us out, they stepped up to do it. And then I went back when it was repaired, and I hooked it back up to the system, and it rebooted, and it worked fine. So, fortunately for them, but like the chief just said, they won't even look at it now without a 2-hour minimum. And that's only online, and since it wouldn't power up, they couldn't even do that. So that would have started at $600, and then they would send the tech out from there. So this is where we are with this particular system right now.
And everything has to be digital, because $42,000 buys a lot of big pads back in the day.
And we also have to be, we're not compliant with our palm print requirements, which is in the new system. This one does not, the one currently does not do that.
And what I did look to do was to get a palm reader to integrate into the system we had, but it's not capable.
So we're obligated by the state to have this.
By the HU's Attorney General's office, and, right, that's where that direction comes from.
And the deadline is February of this
Supposed
year.
to be, I think we're supposed to be compliant for 2014. The directive came out February 2013, and I think we have to be compliant by 2014.
I'm assuming this ties in with Homeland Security
It
systems
does.
and that type.
Well, it has to do with, years ago, when you ink, you always took palm prints and side prints. The new systems, all they did was, all they could do electronically was do with fingers, and when we got the system, that's all that was required. Now they're requiring those, and it is helpful because you can get partials off of side prints, palm prints, you can get partials off that rather than the actual fingers. So if somebody has their hand against a window looking in, you can still get a partial off of it. And it's all part of the bigger picture with Homeland Security, with what the needs are for the national security. They want it all in a database which goes off to Washington, D.C.
And this is a
Is there any
single,
money available for Homeland Security to
We
assist
love
with
all of
this?
that.
I
We got it all.
did not find any grant money available for this. And I did, I tried to source all our resources, and there was no money for that I could find anywhere. And I thought that would be a beautiful thing.
It's pretty easy to get a tank.
One question is, if this is all upfront, you pay on delivery, or is this, is there a payment schedule? You pay for this over, all one time?
What this does include, though, it includes a 5-year service plan with it. This includes everything, and includes the service plan on the printers and everything else that goes with it.
is this a single vendor in the state again?
Sole source provider, yes. And they've been the sole source since 1989.
I need to create a business model where I'm a sole source provider in the state of New Jersey.
For government contracts?
Exactly.
So it looks like this one is that we have to do.
Yeah.
It's really a need.
Yeah.
And it's the only, well, besides the cars, that's the only one that's a significant expense. 42K.
So we're, because $42,000 is above the bid threshold, for sole source provider, we can get it. So the state allows us